Joining me on the channel today is Alex Richards, author of the YA novel Accidental, out now from Bloomsbury. It's about a teen girl dealing with the aftermath of a tragic accidental shooting that caused her mom's death. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the channel, and I'm really excited to talk to you about your book. And I always like to start at the beginning and explore your journey to becoming published. What kind of kid were you?
Um, I was a very different kid than I am as an adult. I would say that I was I was much more outgoing. Like I wanted to be an actor. That was like my dream, is I was going to be, on the stage or something. And I sewed my own clothes. I was a bit like my main character in that sense. Like I loved sewing my own clothes and just like listening to different music and stuff. Yeah, I was kind of like a little strange maybe, but
It's really interesting. A lot of the authors that I've been talking to and interviewing, like theater is a reoccurring theme in their background, or like anything kind of theatrical. And so you seem to have that kind of theatrical bent too, but also like very introverted. So that strange mix of like wanting to explore creativity, but also like kind of being more introverted and analytical. So I think that's really interesting. And what sort
yeah.
of books were you interested in when you were growing up?
I mean, I was a huge fan of the Babysitters Club, so the fact that they've just released this show is like amazing, and I'm loving it. But I wouldn't say that I was interested in quite as much of like what I read today. Like I was super into, the like spinny wheels at the grocery store with like romance novels. Like if it had like a painted girl kind of like looking mysterious, like I was like all over those kind of like tragic heartbreak. I mean, I guess sort of, I guess I am still kind of into tragic heartbreak, but yeah, I just really loved I just read like every book about a girl, like teenage girl, like, just in some kind of moody situation.
And what was your path to wanting to become a writer?
I would say that aside from always wanting to be an actor when I was young, I've always wanted to be a writer. Both of my parents are writers. My mom used to write romance novels, and my dad has also he wrote some romance novels, and just like a lot of different, like I just grew up in such a household of writers that it seemed almost like there was no other thing to do than like want to become a writer.
That's really interesting. And that's I think you're the first one I've talked to who had parents who were writers. And so who had that background. And so you maybe grew up with that being a possibility, like, oh, that's like a realistic job choice for you.
Yeah.
Both romance writers, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
As a kid, did you and your parents like talk about plots and all that creative writing stuff?
I mean, we definitely did, but that was something that I found that I got frustrated by as a child, because like, when I was probably like 10, 12, I started writing my own YA novels, and I would write these stories about like fashion models living in Paris, and like all the kind of these wild topics, and my mom was like, this is great, like I really love the writing, but try like writing what like you don't have, like this is just there was a lot of advice giving, which in hindsight was amazing. And I'm really glad that they gave me advice. And I love to this day, like sending them, an edit or like something that I'm working on. And they give really amazing feedback, like beyond just sort of like, oh, it's good. Like they really do have, when I was a kid, I was like, what do you mean write what I know? Like it could be frustrating as a kid.
Yeah. And wow, you have like built-in free beta readers.
Yeah.
From your parents. That's amazing. Yeah. That is awesome. I think we all would love that. And so tell us about the day that you found out you were going to be published for the first time.
I mean, even just thinking about it is like, oh, my brain, because it was so amazing. Like I've been writing for such a long time and not selling books for such a long time. It felt like that it was just it was almost impossible to believe, like one of those like pinch yourself, because I just my agent called me and screamed into the phone before
oh my god
it was just like all it was just I was so excited.
Were you on sub for a while Had you gotten rejections before?
I had gotten, yeah, on this book specifically, I had gotten rejections, and then there were a few people interested, so it ended up going to auction. And so it's like I knew before it, like I knew kind of that I knew something was going to happen, but I didn't know exactly what or who it was going to go to. And just that feeling, I mean, just when I got like the first offer, like it was just so validating. Like I felt, you know, like I've been trying for such a long time with no success, that just to finally be like, oh my God, I finally have done it. It was, I'm a pretty self-deprecating person. So it was very like, wow, it's mind blowing.
What was there this added pressure because your parents were writers, that like you felt like this pressure of every rejection kind of felt like extra rejection-y, or were you kind of like, I guess a little bit immune to rejection because maybe your parents had dealt with it as well?
Yeah, I mean, also like writing was so different. I mean, I don't know, like I feel like there weren't as many, it wasn't as much of a competitive industry when my mom was writing, like in the, you know, in the early 80s and stuff. Like she kind of had an idea, and it kind of it happened, and it seems so magical to me that it just sort of happened, whereas I'm like, I am like, you know, walking the streets trying to sell books like constantly, and I can't do it. So it is very frustrating. But my parents have always been so encouraging. And I mean, almost to the point where, you know, my mom is like, it's going to happen for you. It's going to happen for you. Or I'm like, oh, it hasn't happened yet. Like, it's probably never going to happen. And so, you know, like, I think I was harder on myself in that sense. My parents have always, yeah, like, I mean, I think that there's a little bit of bias because they're just like, you're our daughter and you're brilliant. But, you know, maybe they were right. Maybe they were right. And I finally was able to sell a book.
Yeah, and the market right now is so tough. So I feel like you definitely accomplished like the 80s was a completely different market. Like there wasn't the internet to compete with. There wasn't Netflix. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that more people were buying books back then than they are now.
Yeah.
And then what the YA market is so tough.
So I know it's so tough and saturated with good stuff. So, you know, it's hard. It's hard to compete.
And what misconception did you have about publishing prior to becoming a debut author that maybe has changed now?
I think just the idea that I've sold a book, now everything is going to be easy. I mean, I'm sure that must be what everybody says, because it is like so not easy. Every single step of the way, there's another confusing, difficult to deal with, you know, from all the different, and also just not knowing what it's going to be like. There's more revisions, and then there's line edits, and then there's copy edits, and then there's past pages, and then you have to mark it, and then, you know, there's just always something being thrown at you, and there's just so much more to it than I ever imagined.
Definitely. Oh, and this is the time to pitch your book. Tell us about your book. What makes it awesome?
This book is, I think the main thing that it has going for it, it's sort of about raising awareness and about hope. So you mentioned basically what it's about. It's about a 16-year-old girl who finds out when she's been living with her grandparents, being raised by them, thinking she has this boring life, and her birth father comes into town and tells her the truth about what happened to her mother, who she thought had died in a car accident. And when she finds out, it's just like her life changes, and it's sort of, she really struggles with how to deal with this reality of what she has done. And I wanted to add in some activism, but I didn't want it to be like a very heavily like activism book. I really tried hard to show multiple sides of gun violence issues, and I wanted it to weave in some humor and leave the reader feeling a sense of hope. So that's what I'm hoping has happened.
Fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to reading it. What is your favorite step when it comes to working on a book? Is it revising or is it drafting?
I think I would say maybe it's revising, because I do love writing, but, you know, and I love that feeling of just like click-clacking on the keyboard and just feeling like these ideas are just flowing out of you. But then sometimes when you're revising, there's really moments where you're like, wow, that's really great. Like, this is so beautiful what I've just written. And you like, sometimes I don't even remember like having written it. It just sort of came out. But it's really cool. And I like, And then also, especially revising, because then you've shown it to an agent or an editor and they've brought it back to you, also like, you know, hopefully saying like this was good and let's improve this part. So it's like it's sort of validating, I think, to see that you've done something that has some merit.
Yeah, it's closer to being done too when you're
Right.
in the revising stage.
Exactly.
And you're fixing things. You're not just putting more mess that's wrong
Right,
when you're
exactly.
when you're when you're
Because there's plenty
drafting.
of moments like that, right, where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just typing, and like, this could be going nowhere. But so yeah, yeah, it is. It's nice.
And about you, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Um, I would say, I mean, I guess I'm more of an introvert, but I'm definitely one of those people, like my face turns bright red all the time and I get that like shaky voice and I get super nervous, but I also don't let it stop me from doing what I want to do. And I think also because I have young kids, it's like sometimes you just have to step out of your comfort zone. So I don't know. I don't know what that makes me.
And are you a perfectionist or a chaos artist?
Um, I guess I'm more of a perfectionist. Like I don't want to think of myself as a perfectionist, but I think I am. Like I'll definitely sit there staring at one sentence for hours.
And do you have a huge ego, or are you humble and demure?
I would say that I'm humble and demure, like to a fault. I definitely think the worst of myself, and every situation I'm like, I'm gonna fail. This is gonna do badly. Like it's just, yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working
Yeah,
on it, but that is my go-to.
relatable. And are you a morning writer or an evening writer?
I think I'm a morning writer. I definitely reached that point in the end of the day where like my brain just can't function anymore. But I keep my computer by my bed. I know it's probably bad. I think there's a lot of people that say like you're not supposed to do this, but like as soon as I open my eyes in the morning, I just like pull my computer onto my lap and like start.
Oh yeah, I know that. But sadly, sometimes I'm on Twitter,
That's true. That is also true.
Facebook instead of my draft. Oops. Um, and are you a plotter or a pantser?
I've become a plotter because I think like when I like the first book that I wrote, or like I mean I've written a bunch of books, that haven't sold, but like it's I thought, oh, I'll just start going and see where it takes me, and there's something really lovely and refreshing about that. But then a lot of the rejections I get are like, there's no story here, or like it just doesn't, that nothing makes sense. And so since I have um, really started working on creating in-depth synopses, it's changed. I feel like it has really changed my writing. And then, whenever you're writing and you feel like you're stuck, just look
Mhm.
back at, your synopsis and like write, focus on the plot. Like, yeah, I think so.
Definitely. And what revision suggestion did you get along the way that was most helpful for your book?
I got some great suggestions from my editor, Mary Kate Castellani at Bloomsbury, and one of the things the main thing that she said was to work on feminism, like to really incorporate more feminism and to kind of just pay attention to that, and sort of how like some people are dismissed because of their gender, or because of the way they look, or they're just teenagers. And so really kind of ramping up the misogyny and like just of the supporting characters was really a great was great advice that helped me, I think, make the book a lot stronger.
Awesome. And was there ever a point where you feared your book would never be published?
um like along before it got picked up by
Yeah,
somebody.
before it got picked up.
Definitely. Like
Yeah.
every step of the way. I mean, I had this idea a few years ago, and I
Mhm.
was really excited about it, and I felt something almost like in my bones that this was going to be like a much more unique story, and something that's also like very important to me, like gun violence and gun control as a topic. But definitely, because I'm a very self-deprecating, humble person, I certainly thought like many times along the way, like, well, I haven't, I don't sell anything else. Like, why would I sell this? Like, I'm sure it'll go badly.
Yeah, definitely. It's getting out of that mindset where you're like, okay,
I
well,
know.
this is this isn't going to go anywhere. I'm wasting my time. Yeah, I have that a lot,
Right?
actually.
It's so hard. It's such a hard feeling to get over.
Yeah, the constant doubt. And uh, would you ever like to be famous?
No. I mean, I would love to keep writing books and for my books to do well, but I definitely would not want to be famous. It just sounds grueling.
If you could wake up tomorrow having gained any one non-supernatural quality or ability, what would it be?
Um, Probably self-confidence. Just
That
something,
is a good one.
or something simple that would make me, yeah, self-confidence, I think.
And what are you working on now?
I'm working on another sort of, teen girl finding closure after a traumatic incident. Without saying like too much, it's a girl who her father has just died, and when she goes home, she finds out that he was having an affair, and she is sort of like completely blown away by this, and then the book is kind of her dealing with that and how she finds closure for herself and how she confronts her mother and all the mistress and people involved in sort of a very unique way.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that one. Um, Thank you so much for being on the channel, Alex. And I'm going to be putting all of your buy links below. So definitely pick up a copy of Accidental out now. And also check out Alex on social media and her website. And thank you so much for being on the channel.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.